So I spoke earlier about holding your heart open in love even when it's hard. And, well, I guess I have to make a little confession here. I'm a Patriots fan. But, you know, we got to hold your heart open for some Eagles, I guess, every now and again. As most of you are aware, I am a Christian Universalist with a particular interest in the interplay of universalism and process theology. Recently, I've been working with David Bentley Hart's fresh translation of the Christian Scriptures. Hart is an Eastern Orthodox scholar renowned for his understanding of biblical Greek. His footnotes on the challenging task of translating the wordplay in the original texts are by themselves, at least to me, a kind of treasure. And by the way, in the translations forward, Hart notes with some pleasure that the original Greek texts are, quote unquote, more universalist than he had expected at the beginning of his endeavor. Surprise, surprise, surprise. You know, I guess I should also point out that there is a bit of snow drifting down. If you need to go, that's fine. You're certainly welcome to stay here in the warmth of this space. And I note that also because one time the great Ralph Waldo Emerson was delivering a sermon in Concord. And at the end of the sermon, sermons, by the way, in those days typically ran an hour and a half. And one congregant noted with some disdain that he never noted the storm happening outside the church. So I don't want to be held accountable for that. I've been inspired by Hart's effort, the translator. Remember him? I went off on a tangent there. And I've been reading his translation through a process theology lens. I know, way geeky. It gets better. But I do that with the idea of trying to illuminate the vision of God that process theology provides by illuminating it or refining it a bit with the light of the Gospels. And I find this a particularly rich practice in my own personal practice, my own theological, spiritual, religious practice as a Unitarian Universalism. How might these scriptures have been written if those authors had been process theologians? To give you an example, and as the starting point for this morning's sermon, we're actually getting there, here's my reinterpretation of the often memorized verse from the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. For God so loves the cosmos as to give it holy love, the only one, so that everyone having faith in love might not perish, but have the life of the age. For God sends love into the cosmos, not that love might cause suffering in the cosmos, but that the cosmos might be healed through love. As a hospital chaplain, I regularly pray with patients. And in those prayers, I often ask for us to be reminded that we are loved. Because in the hospital, in those disruptive clutches of a chronic disease or a severe injury, we are at risk for feeling isolated, defeated, and thereby unloved. Feeling unloved is a form of spiritual distress, even crisis. And like physical disease, it drains our health. Bodily health, and when necessary, the body's healing, are the principal tasks of the healthcare profession. As a chaplain, I can attest that there is a great need for emotional and spiritual health and healing as well, both inside and well beyond the hospital's walls. This morning's services focuses on love as an essential practice to spiritual health and as a balm of spiritual healing, especially in the context of covenant community. That's us, by the way. With love in our hearts and hope in our minds. Love and hope are two of humanity's most powerful spiritual values. Their diminishment and certainly their absence are frequent causes of spiritual distress and crisis. We can literally die without them. You may have observed a significant amount of suffering and crisis in the nation recently, especially among those of us who pursue the power of love and not the love of power, as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. so often proclaimed. Many of you are likely joining with me this morning in enduring the bitter irony of this week's stark, heartbreaking contrasts. One more aside here. Democracy is not dead. It may not be in power, but it's not dead. It lives among us. Remember that. In the Christian scriptures, the writers tell of the Jewish prophet of liberation, Jesus, who going into a garden found solitude and there wept for their beloved Jerusalem. The vitality of this ancient vignette in a place of deep oppression and cruelty has grown stronger for me in recent years as I wrestle with the despair in this world. It's grown stronger not because Jesus also despaired, although I certainly resonate there, but because Jesus found new spiritual strength in that garden, in their weeping. Their love for the world was reignited as they touched the world's sorrow. Even as the Reverend Dr. King found solace and hope in a spiritual mountaintop. The spiritual inspirations of their stories help me to remember the healing power of love. Like them, I may not see the longed-for inbreaking of what Dr. King called the promised land. But I have faith in its inevitability. And in there, my spirit remembers that there is one great and holy love still being sent into this world. And it is available to me. And I am healed of my despair. The renowned mystic St. John of the Cross shared this vision, and it seems somewhat relevant this morning. He wrote, I saw the river over which every soul must pass to reach the kingdom of heaven. And the name of that river was suffering. And I saw a boat which carries souls across the river. And the name of that boat was love. These days, it feels as if the river of suffering is nigh to flood stage, with communities of color, especially at risk for inundation. Currents of social, economic, legal, and environmental oppression are rising, claiming the precious ground won by the stalwart march towards civil rights. Those in power are attempting to pluck the colorful threads of a diverse community from the world's single garment of destiny, and in so doing, desecrate the sacred character of the network of mutuality Dr. King rightly proclaimed. Once again, the Freedom Bridge is barred against us. However, will we reach that promised and promising land? John of the Cross, who is no stranger to suffering, points the way. We must recommit ourselves to the spiritual virtue of love. Against the oncoming torrent of cultural, physical, and spiritual violence intended to leave us in despair, love will buoy our souls. And what a wondrous love it is. For this love has the power to heal the sick at heart and revive the weary soul. Love is the divine medicine with the power to cool the fevered mind, to mend the broken heart, and restore our faith in the guiding wisdom of a greater good, whose steady beacon shines from the far shore of the river of suffering. Who will journey with me? I ask because no one can make this journey alone. The healing power of love is not a personal power. Love can only manifest in the world through caring relationships, including the relationship with God. For persons are not love's origin. To give love, we need to have received love, and theologically, God's primal love, still pouring into this cosmos, is the single greatest and always accessible source of love. This is one of the theological truths at the heart of the Christian Gospels. This is the love we pray to find at the bedside. Love is, by its very substance, a shared virtue whose value can only be revealed in networks of mutually caring relationships. The precious, hope-filled relationships we nurture in our church's relational covenant can and should serve as our anchor in this storm-tossed time. And as the garden in which our mutuality, our interdependence, can be nurtured into a full and generative ripening of the Spirit. Love is not a lofty concept to be contemplated in private reflection, an idea to which one may or may not choose to subscribe. Love, in its spiritual fullness, is life lived deeply, prophetically, from a place of honest compassion. And compassion, of course, means to suffer with. Compassion is the highest and the hardest work of any religious community. It is also the work of healing. Healing one another. Healing a wounded and wounding world. Angela Herrera calls to us. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing and the power to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this room. Angela is right. We have all that we need to heal one another. We have the power to love. I know because I hear it in your voices. I see it in your souls as we walk this journey together. Here is a house of healing, made so by the loving devotion to each other and to this church as a whole. Keep pouring your love into your relationships without fear of running low, because its source is eternal and inexhaustible. Pour it freely until love spills out into the community around us as a sacred spring welling up in this sheltering hillside garden, a place where the poor of spirit, the fearful, the oppressed, the disenchanted can taste the sweetness of love's living water and be healed. Amid this old world with its many spirit-crippling injustices, this community gives me hope. I hope you find it here too. Spiritual healing is possible. In fact, it is happening because we are here together. Love will prevail, my friends. Love must prevail. Let us make it so.